It's time to make it, just give it a try. 'Cause you can make it like the old fat guy.
Thank you for joining us in another episode of You Can Make It with the Old Fat Guy. That's me, David Farrell. Today I'm going to make a blueberry pudding cake. Everybody loves cake for dessert, but by the time you make up all the layers and ice it, it's just so much work, and who wants to do all that work? So instead, we're going to make a cake that makes its own cake on top and a pudding underneath, just like our mother used to make from those cheap mixes when we were kids, but this is going to be way better. So let's get right to making a blueberry pudding cake. We start off with 3 cups or 750 milliliters of blueberries. You can use fresh or frozen. These are some frozen I've just had out of the freezer for an hour. And then you're going to sprinkle over them 125 milliliters or half a cup of sugar and mix it in. Once you have the sugar mixed into the blueberries, you need to make the batter for the cake to put on top of them. So I have my stand mixer out and ready to go, and we're going to start by creaming 125 milliliters or half a cup of butter with 175 milliliters or 3/4 of a cup of sugar. It's important you start slow so the butter doesn't go flying out and send sugar all over the room. And then slowly increase the speed until it starts to mix up with the sugar. You want to let it beat until the sugar's well mixed in and it looks like one solid color and mass. That'll take a minute or two. You'll note that it's a little bit faster because I had the butter out for about an hour before we started. It just makes it quicker than doing it cold right from the fridge. Once the butter is mixed up, you just want to turn your mixer off and you want to add 1 egg. And then beat it up for just a little bit more. Again, start slow and increase the speed. As it beats up, it'll start to get a little more liquid, which is what you're looking for. It's starting to get a little creamy now and a little more of a liquid mass. So we're just going to slow it down and add a 2nd egg. You do the eggs separately because they mix in better rather than trying to mix them in all at once. It tends to separate. Start it slow, pick up the speed, and let it beat in until it starts to look like a liquid mass. You can see it's starting to look like a batter now. So we'll just shut it down and we'll give it a quick stir, or scrape rather, just to make sure we're all nice and got all the ingredients well mixed. So, of course, every batter needs a liquid and some flour. So what we have here is 300 milliliters or 1 1/4 cups of flour with 8 milliliters or 1 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder and 1/2 a milliliter or 1/8 of a teaspoon of salt. And we're going to put just about 1/3 of this in and give it a little stir. When it starts to look like it's mixed up, we're going to add a little bit of the liquid ingredients. So now we're going to add half of 1/2 cup or 125 milliliters of milk. And again, just stir it up until it's starting to combine. Then we're going to add a 2/3 of the dry ingredients. The reason you're alternating like this is you don't want to mix all the flour in at once, or like bread, it'll give off gluten and it'll give you a heavier cake. Alternating it gives you a lighter cake. So we'll mix the 2/3 of the flour in. And the last of the milk. And it's looking now like a real good cake batter. We just have to put the last of the flour in. And we'll let that mix up. As you can see, it's not a difficult batter. It's not like the bigger cake batters where you're doing eggs and whipping them till they lift. You don't have to do any of that kind of work for this. Once it's kind of mixed, you'll note there's some flour around the top and that. So once again, you just want to give it one scrape to get all that flour mixed in to your batter. And then we'll just mix it for a second longer. And your batter is ready to put on top of the blueberries. So we'll take the paddle out and scrape that off. Just get this out of the way. And put that out of the way. Now the batter's just got to be poured over the blueberries. And there we go. Now just move it around. Don't have to worry about getting it smooth. You just want to make sure there's some batter over all parts of the blueberries. It'll settle when it cooks. So now that you've got the batter on the blueberries, we have to make the secret of a pudding cake, which is to put a hot boiling liquid on top of it and then into the oven. So I'm just going to head over to the stove. By the way, I forgot to mention that I added a teaspoon of vanilla at the end of the mixing before I beat it up. So just so you know, that's something you should do. What I have in this pot is 1 cup or 250 milliliters of orange juice, and in this cup, 1/3 of a cup or 75 milliliters of sugar. I'm going to mix the two together over high heat on my stove and just cook it till it's boiling. This will take a minute or two. The reason you want the liquid to be boiling is when it's hot, it makes that batter float up when you pour it on the top, and this will sink to the bottom to make the pudding layer. And we're getting close. It's starting to steam. There you go. You're seeing some bubbles starting to break from the bottom. That's what you're looking for. Now that it's really boiling well, you just carefully pour it over the top of the batter. Be careful not to mix it in. You just want it poured over the top. Do not do anything to mix it. And then we're just going to put that into a preheated 350-degree oven. It's going to stay here for 50 to 55 minutes. I baked the pudding cake for 55 minutes at 350 degrees. It's for 50 to 55. It's just got to be brown on the top and showing sauce around the edges. If you want to make really sure, put a toothpick in the cake part, and if it comes out clean, it's ready. It will be a little jiggly. What you have to do is let it sit for 10 minutes for the pudding part to set up, which I have done. And now comes my favorite part, having the taste of the pudding cake. So we'll just spoon some out. And we'll put a little bit of the sauce over the top. And it's not really good unless you put some ice cream on the top. So I have some ice cream. Let's give it a try. A really light, sweet, but tender sponge cake with a beautiful blueberry sauce. It has just a touch of tart from the orange juice. It really combines well, and the ice cream, of course, creamy ice cream over it, just makes it perfect. This is a great cake, and you can make it.
In this recipe, ingredients used were 750 milliliters of blueberries, 375 milliliters of sugar divided, 125 milliliters of butter, 2 eggs, 5 milliliters of vanilla, 300 milliliters all-purpose flour, 8 milliliters of baking powder, 0.5 milliliters of salt, 125 milliliters of milk, and 250 milliliters of orange juice. For the complete recipe, visit David's blog at oldfatguy.ca. And remember, you can make it. It's time to make it. Just give it a try. 'Cause you can make it like the old fat guy.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of You Can Make It. Today we're going to make what is a very special dish to me. It's called hamburger soup. And the reason it's special is it's an old classic recipe that goes back to the 1930s. In those days, meat was incredibly expensive, so they found making this kind of soup with barley in it and potatoes and carrots, it still felt meaty and tasted meaty on your tongue, but 1 pound could feed 8 people. So not so much beef. But why would we keep making a recipe that was there to save money? Well, first off, I still like to save money, but the main reason is it tasted so good, families got addicted to it, and they've kept making hamburger soup right till this day. It's easy to make, it's healthy, it's got a lot of fiber and not much fat. So I'm going to dive right into making hamburger soup. We're going to start off by chopping up some onion. I've got about a half of a large onion, and what I'm looking for is to get about 1 cup of chopped onion, 250 milliliters of chopped onion. You'll note that I don't just slice it, I make some cuts this way. It just makes it easier if you start your dicing before you take it apart. Let's cut that little bit of root out. And if you do those cuts, then chopping your onion becomes very simple. Now remembering we need a cup, let's just do a quick measure. Cup or 500 milliliters, or excuse me, cup or 250 milliliters of chopped onion. We're a little short, so we're going to have to do that end piece. And to do this, just cut around. And there we go. We have about a cup of chopped onion, which we'll just set aside for the moment. Now, we need about a cup of chopped celery, which we also want to dice into about a 1/4 inch dice. So we'll just cut this in half, makes it easier to do. Cut it into sticks, and then just cut it at about a 1/4 inch. Now you'll note I take the knife and I keep my fingers up and down so my fingers are not going under the blade, and try not to touch a hot iron while you're doing it. That's about 3/4 of a cup. I just know by eye, but I suggest you measure it. That's about a cup of chopped celery. We'll just set it aside with my onions. Over here. Now that we've got the onions and the celery chopped, we're just going to take 1 pound or 500 grams of lean ground beef. You can use regular, but you'd have to drain it after you cook it. So use lean, it just makes it easier. And we're just going to break the hamburger into 2 teaspoons of oil I've had heating up. Now you'll note I'm cooking in a large electric fry pan. Normally you'd do it in a saucepan, but I want you to be able to see what I'm doing. So I'm doing it in this large pan just so you can see all the steps. Once you've got the hamburger kind of broken down, just continue breaking it and moving it around while you're cooking it until it's nicely colored. So we'll just let it start to brown up a bit and we'll carry on with chopping our next ingredients. So we need about 1.5 cups of chopped carrot. Now I like to chop my carrot by cutting it a bit on the bias first. It gives you easier flat pieces to cube. There we go. And just take 2 or 3 of them at a time. Cut them in half and then dice them. Yeah, one got away. So we'll just keep doing that until we get about 1.5 cups of chopped carrots. If you're going to be doing a lot of chopping, practice slower. Don't try and keep up the speed I'm doing it. Just take it a bit slower until you get used to it. Of course, I washed all of these vegetables very well before I did it. Don't peel them though, because a lot of the healthy vitamins are in the surface of a vegetable. So wash them well, but don't peel it off. You can hear the beef sizzling, so you occasionally want to give it a stir around so you can make it crumbly. Just keep breaking it down. So I've got about 1.5 cups of carrots, and then you want to do 2 medium potatoes. To do your potatoes, just cut them in planks. Again, you're looking about a little bit over 1/4 inch dice. Now you'll note I don't peel my potatoes. So much of the vitamins and healthy parts of a potato are in the skin. If you throw the skin away, you're throwing away healthy food. Just don't do it. Leave those skins on your potatoes in your soup. Now, I'm running a little out of room here, so I'm just going to put those potatoes with the carrots to give me room to cut the second potato. So there's our 2 potatoes cut up, and I'll just put that in with the rest of them so it's easier to add later. And we'll start working in our fry pan again. You notice the beef is starting to look less pink and is colored through and is getting some brown spots on it. We're just going to keep cooking this until the beef is totally grayed out, cooked, and there's absolutely no pink spots left on it. You'll note that there's not a lot of fat in the beef because I bought lean ground beef. If you bought regular ground beef, you'd have to drain this first. I won't need to. I'll just need to keep going and getting this nice and brown. It is important you break it up fine, but it will break up when it's cooking too. You'll see that the pink's gone out of the beef now, so we can start putting the rest of our ingredients in. We're going to start with the onion and the celery, because they're going to cook with the beef before the rest of the ingredients go in. These will need to cook for just a couple of minutes until they start to get a little translucent, start to look a little clear. All of this is being done over medium-high heat. I'm just going to keep breaking that beef into smaller pieces too while I'm cooking the onions and the celery. You'll see that they're just starting to get some clear spots on the sides of the onion, and the celery's getting a little soft, which is just what you're looking for. When you get that look of that, the onions are just starting to flatten out on the flare, you're ready to add the rest of the ingredients. So, what are the rest of the ingredients? Well, we'll start off with the potatoes and the carrots we cut up. Then we're going to put in 791 milliliters or 28 ounces of canned diced tomatoes, including the liquid that came with the tomatoes. I have 1 can of condensed consommé, not diluted, right out of the can in this bowl. It gets added. Then we're going to add 4 cups or 1 liter of water. I have in this 1/3 of a cup or 75 milliliters of pot barley. You want to make sure it's pot barley. There's something else called pearl barley that they take the crust off of, but it's not as healthy, doesn't taste as good. Make sure you get pot barley. It's what's called for in the recipe. I'm going to add 5 milliliters or 1 teaspoon of commercial beef base. This is the stuff you buy to just make up a quick stock or a quick cup of soup. So I'm going to add that to it. I'm going to put in about 1/4 teaspoon of fresh ground pepper. I'm going to put in exactly 15 milliliters or 1 tablespoon of Worcestershire sauce. I'm lying, it just has to be close to 15 milliliters. And by the way, it's not Worcestershire sauce, it's correctly pronounced Worcester sauce, but it's spelled like Worcestershire. And I'm going to put in 5½ ounces of tomato paste. That's 1 small can of tomato paste. And all that gets mixed together in the bowl. Okay, and I'm just going to check my list of ingredients because there's so many I might have forgot something. Yes, I did. I need to put in 2 milliliters of paprika. So 2 teaspoons or 10 milliliters of paprika. That's 1, that's 2, and that was smart. Just stir it up. Now, we want to bring this to a boil, and then we're going to let it simmer for 1.5 hours. The soup has been simmering for 1.5 hours, which lets the barley get fully cooked and cooks all the vegetables until they're really tender. Now comes the best part of making anything, giving it a taste. We're going to do that right away. You'll note that it gets a nice, rich, tomatoey red color. It's almost as thick as a stew because remember, it was designed to be a meal, not just a soup. And it's really, really looks hearty. And it's inexpensive because there's not much beef in it. But let's give it a try. Oh, I love the fact that it's got tomato backing. The barley together with the beef fools your tongue into thinking there's just tons of beef in here. So you feel like you're eating something really rich and hearty. The potatoes and the carrots make it almost like a stew, so you feel like you're having a meal. You really should try this. That is hamburger soup, and you can make it.
In this recipe, David used the following ingredients: 500 grams of lean ground beef, 250 milliliters each of onion and celery, 375 milliliters of diced carrots, a 284 milliliter can of condensed consommé, a 791 milliliter can of diced tomatoes, a 156 milliliter can of tomato paste, 1 large or 2 small potatoes, 75 milliliters of pot barley, 2 milliliters of Tabasco sauce, 15 milliliters Worcester sauce, 5 milliliters each of salt and pepper, 10 milliliters of paprika, and 1 liter of water. For the complete recipe, visit David's blog at oldfatguy.ca. And remember, you can make it.